And ultimately, I've come to the view that our sense of self, who we are, right down to who we think we are, how we think we belong in the world, that is encoded in your immune system. So if we really want to get on top of symptoms of immune dysfunction, like, oh, you get too many colds or flu and so on, uh, we have to dive down to the core of who you think you are, really.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hello and welcome back to New Earth Co-Creators. I'm totally delighted to welcome Dr. Don Ka'imi Pilipovich today, healer, educator, and co-founder of the Acunet Healing System. For more than 3 decades, he's weaved together traditional Chinese medicine, neuroscience, and body-mind medicine into a powerful approach to health. Welcome, Ka'imi. Delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sarah. It's always a pleasure to be able to share with people what I do, because I genuinely am excited by the work that I've created and that I teach to others. So.
Well, it's incredible work, and we'll be diving into that. But today we're going to be focusing on the immune system, because as the weather starts to get colder, as the light starts to dim and the days get shorter, it's a really important time to really focus on taking care of our immune system and how we can strengthen the immune system and also resilience. What do you consider the immune system to be? Is it simply about fighting germs?
Well, that's a big question. Let me try to answer it in a reasonable amount of time. I certainly used to think that. I used to think that the immune system was just about fighting germs. And now it's really become a dominant focus in everything I do in healing, because the immune system is interwoven with every other system in the body. And ultimately, I've come to the view that our sense of self, who we are, right down to, who we think we are, how we think we belong in the world, that is encoded in your immune system. So if we really want to get on top of symptoms of immune dysfunction, like, oh, you get too many colds or flu and so on, uh, we have to dive down to the core of who you think you are, really. And I think for some people that may sound a little bit like, whoa, this guy's out there. But when you think about the function of the immune system, its whole job is to determine self from not self. Self is the healthy tissues in your body, all the healthy cells that are supposed to be there. And it's also what I call team self. And what I mean by that is we have estimated 40 trillion cells in our body, but we're supposed to have like 40 trillion bacteria if we're healthy, right? So, but some bacteria are better than others. So the bacteria that are like actually good for us because they help to break down fiber and other things that we don't break down in our digestion, and feed us nutrients that we wouldn't get otherwise without that synergistic microbiome. That all of that is team self. Team not self is is cells that got made wrong, like cancer cells, or cells that have been infected by a virus and are now just viral replicating factories. Those are not part of the team, right? Or actual microbes, bacteria and viruses that are just not our friends. The whole job of the immune system is to say, is that self or not self, and then protect and nurture team self and attack and eliminate everything that doesn't work for us. But because that's the job, ultimately, well, who decides what self is? The immune system. And so really we cannot separate working on the essence of who we think we are and what our beliefs are and what our hopes and aspirations are, as well as our fears and challenges. We can't separate that from immune function, and we can't separate immune function from those issues. And so, to me, I mean, the Acunet healing system, which I co-created with my partner, I've come to see it as applied psychoneuroimmunology, which is a mouthful of a word, but it's the relationship between our thoughts and our emotions and our nervous system and immune function. And it's good science, and but I think Acunet is really, if I was to give it like, okay, what does this address? It is psychoneuroimmunology. It's bringing us into harmony on all levels. And then your immune system's amazing if it's working right. It'll take care of everything.
I
So,
love that. I love that you break it down into that very simplistic idea of the job of the immune system being establishing what is self and what is non-self. So, what starts to happen if our sense of self is really distorted, if who we believe ourselves, who we are, if the stories that we tell ourselves are not very healthy, because we all perhaps have our history, our stories where I'm not good enough, um, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, giving is better than receiving. There can be lots of distortions in
mhm.
the way that we view ourselves in the world. What starts to happen if this is the case?
Well, I think actually what you asked there about, oh, am I not good enough? Am I worthy of receiving? Those kind of core self-worth issues, that starts to program the immune system in a negative way. And and so, ideally, again, the immune system's protecting and nurturing healthy cells and only attacking unhealthy cells and unhealthy microbes. But if you start to think, I'm not worth taking care of, I'm not worth receiving, in life and so on, if your self-worth is going down because of those kind of beliefs, and unfortunately this is really common, so I'm glad you asked that question. Well, one of the things that can happen is you start developing chronic inflammation, and and if that proceeds, well, at a basic level, that starts to look like, oh, maybe your joints are achy, maybe you have digestive upset. You have to be very careful about what you eat because it's very easy for your intestines to get upset and inflamed and so on. Um, but it also at some point then it starts creating allergies, both to things like pollen in the air or food sensitivities, and then I have to be careful what I eat gets worse and worse and worse, which is really interesting. I mean, if you talk to people who have, oh, I have to be so careful what I eat, they have to be more careful now than they did 10 years ago or they did 20 years ago, right? So it's not about, oh, they were born with a hardwired allergy to some substance. No, their immune system is just getting further and further and further out of balance, basically. And if that goes on far enough, then you end up with autoimmune diseases where the body is literally attacking healthy tissue. And, you know, so underneath the, all autoimmune disease is the idea that I'm not very valuable. I'm not worthy of protecting and cherishing and nurturing. And then based on what other imbalances and beliefs there are, that'll determine what tissues are attacked because there's a lot of different autoimmune diseases. But underneath it, there's always that. So,
I'm glad that you brought that up because autoimmune diseases and cancer are becoming more and more prevalent in our world.
hmm.
And what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that we can try and sort of change the world out there in the case that you mentioned, limiting the food that we're eating and controlling that out there. But from what I'm understanding on your view of the immune system is that it's much more powerful to change the inner workings of our belief systems, our emotions, and then see the impact that has on our physiology.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned cancer because, well, I mentioned inflammation. Inflammation is a precursor to cancer. When we have inflamed tissues, we're going to have more cell replication errors, and the immune system is not going to be able to see the erroneous cells. And look, this is something that not everybody knows, but cancer is making cancer cells is normal. We make 300 billion cells a day. You're gonna make some wrong. That's guaranteed. You can't make 300 billion of anything with a perfect track record. But cancer cells look different, and if the immune system is in balance, it should say, oh, you don't look like you belong here, and bring in the natural killer cells and zap the bad cells before they have a chance to multiply and form a tumor. And and so, but again, the receiving thing. Um, Look, I've had great results with cancer patients in many cases, and including people who've been sent to me with stage 4 cancer. Get your affairs in order. Sorry. And we work. I don't treat their cancer. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm an acupuncture physician, and and I've become what used to be the norm for physicians in the old days was that philosophers and physicians weren't a separate job description. Is that idea of how you perceive the world changes your emotional state, and it's for perceptions. That's cognitive psychology. Events don't cause emotions, perceptions do. Anyways, with those people, I have not had a cancer patient yet where we didn't work really hard on the idea that it's better to give than receive. Oh no, nothing for me. I'll just give. And underneath that is, I'm not valuable. My body isn't valuable. And we have to dismantle that belief and start finding a deeper core self worth. And then their immune system kicks in and clears up the cancer. And the doctors are shocked. They're like, whoa, we don't know what happened, but you're cancer free. Isn't that awesome? So,
That's incredible. And you mentioned earlier sorry, my brain's going to go. It's a long word.
it is a long word.
That's
Psychoneuroimmunology.
what was confused. That's when you get a mental block, psychoneuroimmunology. And that is the connection between our emotions and the way we think and our immune system. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Okay. Well, first, to kind of explain the concept of psychoneuroimmunology, there's two. It's more complex than this, but if you focus on two things, I think you can get an appreciation of it. If we have, a strong emotional response to something, and especially if we have like a fear response, oh my goodness, this is terrible, I'm in danger. Well, guess what happens? Your fight or flight nervous system gets activated. When the fight or flight nervous system gets activated, your inflammation response is triggered. And so the more often you go into fight or flight, your inflammation just goes up and up and up, and it doesn't recover. So, and there's a whole host of problems just with the inflammation. And so the other thing is when you go into fight or flight, all resources are supposed to be prioritized to sending blood and nerve energy to the skeletal muscle, so you can literally either run or fight for your life. All other activities in the body, it's like they get turned down. Like there's a dial on the digestion. The digestion slows down and you don't get as much energy and nutrients out of your food. The immune system kind of gets put on the back burner, because let's face it, do you want to run from the tiger, or do you want to clean the body? Let's clean the body later and run from the tiger now. And so that's a survival mechanism. We are built with that idea of, if there's an actual emergency, an actual saber-toothed tiger chasing us or whatever, we should have a mechanism to say, everything else on hold, all resources to battle stations. But if we stay in battle stations, that's an emotional response. Then everything gets, all the maintenance of the body gets put on hold.
And the trouble
So
is the world that we live in at the present time. It can feel like we're being chased by a tiger, even if there's not a tiger
well,
there.
especially in the modern world, we all have these things in our pockets, and as soon as you turn it on, you've got a news feed of all the terrible things happening in the world. And you know, yes, it's true, there are terrible things happening in the world, but in the old days, I mean, like really old, before any kind of electronic communication, we only knew what was happening in our village. we didn't we weren't asked to be afraid and worry about what was happening with 8 billion people. We only kind of had an awareness of our village, so to speak. And our nervous system hasn't evolved to deal with that kind of assault of trying to get us into that fight or flight mode. So the other thing about the the psychoneuroimmunology is that what they figured out is, every time you have an emotional response to something, your body manufactures chemicals and special neuropeptides, which Candace Pert referred to as the molecules of emotion. So it literally changes the chemical makeup of your bloodstream. Now, here's the kicker, is that these molecules of emotion are both manufactured largely in your immune system, but the primary receptor sites for these molecules of emotion are in the immune system. And so, literally, you cannot separate the physiology, or the physical hardware in the body that manages immune function, from the physical hardware or physiology in the body that actually processes our emotions. And so, there's just no way to actually have an emotional response without having an immune effect of some sort.
It's really interesting. And my understanding from reading Candice Pert's book was that if we have a disposition to something like fear or anxiety, whatever our predominant emotion is, then the receptor sites actually increase. So it therefore becomes far easier to manufacture, say it's anxiety is your predominant emotion, it then becomes far easier. So it's kind of like, how do we then start to break that pattern, particularly if there's an ancestral component to this. I mean, a lot of people can feel trapped by their genetics. Is that how you perceive it, Ka'imi?
I let me be careful with my answer. I think a lot of people can feel trapped by their genetics and so on, but at the same time, we know that we can change epigenetics, which is the actual way that the immune system expresses. And the other thing is that I, I think there's ample evidence of this in um, in molecular biology, is that we inherit tendencies towards emotional states. and they've actually tracked this down to gene sequences. If your grandmother was brought up in an abusive household and then developed an anxiety disorder as a result of that, they can actually track the genetic sequences that were altered during her lifetime because of the chronic anxiety, and that they can be passed down to the grandchildren. So, but that's again, it's not a fundamental a change to the genetic code. It's a change to how it shows up, and we can change that. We have an epigenetic update procedure in Acunect, which gets brilliant results. Um, there's another thing which there's another way of looking at this idea of escalating, which you were talking about with Candace Bird's work, is you can look at the receptor sites and that's useful, but you know the science starts to get a little bit chewy when you start looking at it that way. I think Chinese medicine has a way that is kind of easier to comprehend, and the idea is that um, if the the energy in the spleen meridian or spleen pancreas meridian or the spleen chi, if you will, is affected by the emotion of worry. If you go through a period of worry, it actually weakens the spleen energy. When your spleen chi is weak, then you tend to worry too much, which weakens the spleen chi, which makes you worry, which weakens the spleen chi. And you get on this escalating hamster wheel of worry. And I learned, look, about 3 decades ago or so, like if somebody comes in, a client comes in, they're obviously worried. The last thing you want to do is say, try not to worry. What you need to do is you need to break the cycle by balancing and strengthening their spleen energy. And then that's like putting your finger in the hamster wheel. It breaks the cycle. And I'm mentioning the spleen. This pattern of escalating cycles goes on with all the emotions. But the spleen is what gives energy to the immune system and gives energy to the digestion. So again, if somebody's like, oh no, nothing for me, it's better to give than receive, right? Sounds like a noble thought, but really, if giving and receiving aren't equal, the system breaks down. And if you always are the giver, always are the giver, always are the giver, then you're weakening your spleen chi and you're directly taking energy away from both your digestion and your immune system.
That's fascinating. And I'd love to hear more about, from a Chinese medicine point of view, the other organs that are involved in the immune function. So you've mentioned the spleen and its role in immune function and how that gets affected by worry. So what other distortions can there be in terms of the organs that can affect then the immune system?
Right. Okay. So there's a few. Number one, the kidney meridian is associated with the emotion of fear. And so again, if you have fear, it weakens the kidney energy. If the kidney energy is weak, you tend to have fear and you go into that cycle. That's really important because fear is what triggers the fight or flight nervous system. So that's an easy one to make that psychoneuroimmunology bridge back to, oh, okay, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense, right? So that's one. Um, in Chinese medicine, the classical view is that the root cause of all disease is separation from the Tao or separation from God or collective consciousness. Because when you feel like you're all alone and that, you know, you've been abandoned and forsaken in the universe, the natural emotion is fear. And okay, that's going to weaken the kidney energy, which is the core energy of the body. But in Western medicine, it triggers the fight or flight nervous system, and so which distorts everything. So there's actually a lot of wisdom in that old saying, right? So, and so you know, working on balancing, you know, the emotion of fear in the kidney meridian on all levels has profound effects. The the liver, a lot of Chinese medicine is looks at the organs as like the imperial court. the heart is the most important citizen. The heart is the emperor. All the other organs are like the ministers of the different departments, and and report to the emperor. The liver is the general of the armed forces. And so if the liver is not strong, it's not supervising the immune system. And in fact, you know, I I've come to agree with some other practitioners who view autoimmune diseases as autoaggression diseases because the liver regulates the emotion of anger. Now, anger is very misunderstood emotion. It is what moves us forward in life, but most of us think it's a bad emotion, so we don't actually get in touch with it, find a graceful way to communicate it. We let it build up and weaken our liver, and then we turn that anger inwards and develop allergies and autoimmune diseases. Um, um, so the, the heart supervises all of the other meridians, and so keeping everything in balance is the job of the heart meridian, and the the lungs are involved in chi production, and we the imagery is the lungs don't breathe in oxygen, they breathe in pure chi or air chi. And you see this in some cultures. I used to live in Hawaii. That's where I got the nickname Ka'imi. The word for breath in Hawaiian is ha, but it doesn't mean breath. It means breath of God, because you should be breathing in God with every breath. And and if you're not, maybe because you don't think you're worth it, then you're actually not making enough chi in order to have enough chi and energy to actually run the immune system. It takes energy to do work in the body, and if we have poor digestion and poor breathing, we just don't have enough vitality for the immune system to be doing its job. It's like the immune system's like, oh, do we have to? I'm really kind of tired today, you know, which is why immune issues so lopsidedly affect older people because their vitality is declining. Cancer affects older people at a dramatically higher rate because they've built up a lot of inflammation, and B, they just kind of depleted their chi. If they haven't been living well, if we keep everything in balance, we can actually maintain our chi really strong for a really long time. And I mean, um, I'm officially a senior citizen. I have a freedom pass here in London, which gives me free bus rides and tube rides and so on. And but I don't get sick because I've been focusing on trying to practice what I preach to my clients and take care of myself. And my immune system is as stronger than ever. And I used to get I used to get herpes outbreaks all the time when I was young. I don't get them anymore. A few years ago, I had a cancerous thing developing on my ear, and I had it burned off by the doc once and came back. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to sort this out myself. It's all good. It's gone. It just healed, right? So, and because I've been working at managing my emotions and building my chi so that my body can do what it's supposed to do.
It's fascinating what you're saying about the emotions, because basically what you're saying is that all the emotions are involved in the immune system. So it's going back to what you said initially about,
Right.
it really is where we hold our sense of self, not just in terms of, that physiological aspect of, is this self, is this non-self, but in terms of, who we believe we are. Now, I understand from Chinese medicine that the climates and imbalance in the climates can also have a strong effect in immune imbalances. Is that something you can speak to as well?
Yeah, again, like all these topics are big, but here's a few ideas. If you have too much water retention in the body, we call that dampness in Chinese medicine, then that makes the immune system less capable. It actually all diseases in all infectious diseases in Chinese medicine are considered opportunistic. What that means is they take advantage of an imbalance in the body, and the climates is one of them. And so the spleen meridian, which I said has a big relationship to the immune system, um, it manages how much dampness there is in the body. So if we injure the spleen chi either through excess worry, which is exceedingly common, or excess sugar and refined carbohydrate consumption, which is pretty massive. I mean, both in the US and the UK, I'm not familiar with statistics in other countries, but in both the US and the UK, for the population as a whole, it's considered that ultra processed foods make up around 70% of calories. And those ultra processed foods are going to absolutely trash your spleen chi, create dampness in the body, and then create an environment where infections can gain a foothold and thrive because the body's out of balance. So, I think that's an easy one to see. So, um, another is that the lungs are injured by dryness, excess dryness. Now, here in the UK, we don't have much problem with that, right? So we never get really, really dry weather. But I used to live in Colorado, and sometimes the humidity would dip down to below 10%, and it's just like sucking all the moisture out of you. And that is hard on the lungs when it persists too much. And in fact, a part of what people think of as jet lag when they get off a long flight and they are just absolutely in bad shape and feeling exhausted and horrible and maybe on the edge of some kind of a cold that they didn't have when they got. I guarantee you they did not catch the cold on the plane. It takes longer than that. But most planes run at less than 10% humidity. And there's technical reasons for that, but why they do that. But it's really hard on your lung energy, and it predisposes people to that. And look, I used to travel all over the world teaching, and I followed closely when Boeing was going to release the 787 Dreamliner because of the materials choices. They were going to be able to run the humidity at 20% instead of 6. And I can tell you, on a plane like that or the A380, after a really long flight, you arrive so much fresher
Yeah.
because the dryness has actually injured your lungs. So,
That's so interesting. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to it. So people listening in, what would you say were the sort of two foundational principles outside of diet or supplements, that changes that people can make right now to support the immune system as the weather is getting colder?
um, okay, so you know what? Here's the first thing that's coming to mind is to make a practice of looking for something beautiful and amazing every single day. And why is because when you do, the emotion you experience is joy. Joy is like a tonic to the immune system. Joy neutralizes all of the other emotions and then hence tends to balance all of the other organs. And and I think so much, you see people going around the street like walking down the street looking at their phone and not even noticing anything, right? So, and and I remember when I used to live in Hawaii, where I lived, there's just the conditions were perfect for seeing what I call a night rainbow. And because the trade winds would come out of the northeast and bring the rain and so on, but the sun would, I mean, the moon would rise from the direct east. And there'd be a lot of times where there'd be squalls over the ocean, but full moon rising, and the moon is very bright in Hawaii. You can read by it, and there'd be enough light that you could actually see a rainbow. Now, it was muted compared to a daytime rainbow, but if it was really bright, you could actually see the color striations. And I'd never heard of such a thing. And the first time I saw one, was driving on the highway and I went, whoa. And I nearly crashed the car because my mind was absolutely blown. But like, wow, who would have thought that the universe could create such an incredible phenomenon? But then once I knew they were there, I started looking for them when it was around the full moon. And I would see them every month. And okay, because I looked for them. I never met anybody else who saw them in the
Well,
community where I lived. And I ended up talking to the pastor at one of the local churches, and he says, "Oh, I've heard of that. There was a lady who lived her whole life here in Kohala. She used to go to this church. She's passed on now, rest in peace. But she saw three of those night rainbows in her life, and it moved her so much she wrote a book about it." And I'm like, "Bah, I see like two or three a month,
wow.
right?" There's joy and miracles to be seen every day if we open our eyes and look. And if we do that, we experience joy. We feel connected to the divine in whatever way you want to define that. But we feel connected to the divine, and that helps to heal our fear and our kidney chi and keep us out of fight or flight. So that's enormously beneficial. The other tip is when you do get a cold or a flu, do not take some kind of paracetamol product like or acetaminophen is what they call it in the States. Like, we have Lemsip here in the UK or whatever. Because what it does, it makes you feel better temporarily, but it squashes your fever. That's your body's ability to fight off germs. That's part of your immune response. And you're just saying, turn off the immune response. And what that leads to, and I've seen this in so many people, is what we call old flu in Chinese medicine. And instead of having the flu, they push the flu down. And what it creates is chronic inflammation and and brain fog because the brain is inflamed, and body pain and chronic fatigue, and I've seen this in too many cases, when the brain is inflamed enough, it causes seizure disorders. And when you clear these old flus, the seizures go away, and they're usually seizures. Well, the doc said it's not quite epilepsy, and they couldn't find any drugs to treat it, right? Yeah, because it wasn't epilepsy. It was a inflammation caused from a flu that somebody never had because they suppressed their fever with some kind of over-the-counter painkiller kind of thing to suppress their fever. And that causes so much disease. It's not even funny. So that'd be my two tips for what you can do on your own to improve your immune function. So
Thank you for sharing your wisdom around that, Ka'imi. And I'm incredibly fortunate because I've known Ka'imi. He's been a mentor for me for over 20 years now, I believe. And I've been fortunate enough to train in that Connect system that Ka'imi is co-founder of. And I've heard the rainbow story before, and it never ceases to bring joy. It's just such a beautiful story. And I've heard you previously say, in connection to that, that kind of like be prepared to see miracles every day.
Mhm.
And I feel that both you and we're in the miracle business. So I'd
Mm.
love to hear your stories, miracle stories about how you've supported people's immune system with AccuNet, and also how how you work with the immune system with AccuNet, because you've mentioned Chinese medicine, but the way you work now, it's not needles. You're not needling people. You can work on Zoom. You can work at a distance. You can give sessions from a distance. So please tell us how you would approach if someone came in with an immune system dysfunction, how you would approach that with your work.
Well, with the Acunet healing system, what we've developed is a very comprehensive protocol, if you will, of all the different systems in the body. And we look at the organs, but we also look at the meridians. And with that, we look at the spiritual aspects or the consciousness of the organs. And so we won't just be balancing, the spleen. We'll be finding out, one of the psycho-spiritual aspects of spleen function that needs to be balanced to get the spleen functioning right. We also look at things like the endocrines, but so we're bringing in more of a Western medicine perspective there, but again, looking at, you know, what's the aspect of intelligence in the mind, and this is often subconscious, right? That actually regulates healthy functioning of the endocrines. We actually we look at the mind. We clear common beliefs just by tapping, and that's how we do it. I'll mention a bit more about the things on the health map, but instead of me trying to figure out what does this person need, I access my intuition through a form of self muscle checking, just with my fingers. That's a no, that's a yes, and that means I can do it at a distance. I don't have to pull on somebody else's arm, and then we have a tapping technique over the head, which is kind of like waking up the brain and the nervous system. Yo, brain, could you take a fresh look at this issue? And then we tap the over the heart energy center, which brings in all of the meridians because the heart rules that. So it's kind of like yo nervous system, yo meridian system. Could we just take a fresh look and see if maybe you got into fight or flight somewhere and got seriously out of balance on this? And that's enough. It's a suggestion, but then the body brings itself back into balance with that. Now, at a distance, some of my clients actually tap themselves because they find they feel more connected to it. But many of my clients don't. I tap as if they were right in front of me. And my intention of saying to their nervous system, hey, have a fresh look, and to their heart, have a fresh look, is enough. And um, so, so, I'll be going around doing that in the mind. We have a balancing for oneness, and finding that part of the subconscious that knows you're connected to God or oneness, balancing the emotions, clearing common beliefs, clearing the charge from old memories that are just running like a tape in the subconscious. We go into the energy systems like the chakras and the minor chakras and the five elements and the Wei Chi, which is a concept not many people know about, but it's like a surface energy field that protects you from the environment. The Wei Chi's strong, you don't get sick because it literally blocks. Like if the Wei Chi lining the lungs is strong, somebody can sneeze right at you, and yes, you are breathing in viral particles. That's true. But if your Wei Chi's strong, you breathe them right out because they don't stick to your respiratory linings. And the first principle of microbiology is if a pathogen can't gain adhesion, stick in layman's terms, to tissue, it cannot infect you, right? So we balance that. We um, work with the archetypal energies, which is the planetary archetypes, which a lot of people don't understand this. Astrology is actually the wisdom of mythology of ancient times. And Here's an example, which I've done so many hundreds of times in person, is somebody comes in to see me with back pain. And okay, well, I'm a massage therapist by training in addition to being an acupuncture physician, and I evaluate them and I figure out that their pelvis is crooked. That the SI joints in the sacroiliac joints in the back are stuck, and instead of there's these bony prominences on the front that should be level, but they're not. They're like, they're really off. Well, oh, that means their pelvis is twisted and crooked. So it's like, gosh, if you make the foundation crooked for your house, the windows won't close anymore, right? How is your back going to be okay on a crooked foundation? So now I used to do massage and manual therapy techniques to get to try to level out their pelvis. Now I end up usually getting the sacrum, which is the big bone at the back of the pelvis, and I get to just through the muscle checking the archetype of Jupiter. Jupiter is like our inner philosopher. Jupiter's the inner voice that says everything is going to be okay. Jupiter's the inner voice that says even on a bad day, I'm in good hands, right? And I trust the process. And so that calms the whole fear thing right down. And I put my hand underneath their sacrum and I tap head and heart and saying, yo, sacrum, listen to Jupiter. Jupiter's inside of everybody, but maybe it's not listening. Can you guys just listen to your inner Jupiter? And I actually feel the pelvis untwist all by itself, no force. It just
Amazing.
it just shifts by itself, and that kind of adjustment lasts. If you go have a chiropractor pop you back into alignment, it's brilliant, and you can walk out of the chiropractor's office out of pain, but it won't last. You have to keep going back. And this is tapping into the ability of the body to truly heal itself. Look, we get into the nervous system and how we see the world, and into actually balancing the immune system. There's a whole host of things I could talk for a really long time about everything in Acunex, but it's all interconnected. It all affects the immune system, and so I don't try to analyze it. I just say, okay, universe, little help here. Where do I start? What's the best place to start for this person to start nudging them back to balance so that their immune system can function just like God intended? So,
I felt so grateful to have found the Connect system, to discovered it, because it just totally transformed my practice and the results that I was getting. So any of you that can relate to what being said today, do contact Ka'imi, as he's available for online sessions, no matter where you are. You can work with different time zones as well, Ka'imi, I believe. Or do contact me as well. Do reach out to both of us if you have any questions, or if you'd like to find out more about AccuNet. And Ka'imi also runs some incredible courses. So please let us know, Ka'imi, about any courses that you're running at the moment, and also how people can get in contact with you. He's actually been incredibly generous and offered an 8-part immune boost, power boost, into the New Earth Co-Creators YouTube channel membership area, which is a low-cost area. So do check that out as well, if you'd like to find out about more how Ka'imi works. But I would highly recommend that you connect with him in person, either with a session or by joining one of his programs. So let us know some more about what you're running at the moment, Ka'imi.
well, I've always got some courses running, a mix of like beginning courses and advanced courses. The 8-part immune balancing series, I did a few years ago to when everybody was concerned about COVID, and it got a great response. And I'm really thrilled that more people can be exposed to that information, because my hope with that is that people get a vision of empowerment, that they don't have to be at the mercy of germs. And here's the thing, germs are everywhere. Here's a statistic I'm pretty sure is in one of the lectures. They did a study where they measured how many viral particles fall in a square meter of land, on the earth. every day. It's like 800,000. We are surrounded by germs. That's not the problem. The challenge is our immune system is literally amazing if we can be in harmony on all levels. And that's why everything I do is body, mind, spirit balancing. So I hope people get a lot of empowerment out of that. So, Sarah, you asked about how people can get in contact with me. Well, our website is accunect.com. That's ACCUNECT.com. And then, in terms of finding out more about, people are interested in maybe doing some sessions with me, I'll give you a link that you can post below that allows people to book a no obligation consult with me where we can have a short Zoom meeting just for them to explain what their challenges are and for me to explain how I might approach that before signing up for sessions. Now, in terms of sessions, I have clients as far east of me um, as India and as far west of me as Singapore and Hong Kong. I see clients all over the world from on Zoom. I see no difference to the power of my in-person sessions to the power of my distance sessions. So if anybody has a concern, yes, please contact me. And for that, the main place for people to start if they want to learn how to do AccuNect would be with the AccuNect Connect course. That's our entry point into the AccuNect healing system, and it teaches you a lot of really powerful techniques. It's super easy to learn. Everybody can definitely do it by the end of the course, and they start getting results as soon as they start the course. That is, we are always running that. You can join that at any time. And then we do have advanced courses that kind of run in rotation, once you've got past that first course. But the first course is so powerful, even though it's super simple, that we allow people to go through a certification program and become a certified AccuNect practitioner available, to be listed on our website as a certified practitioner after just taking the entry level course, because I fully believe that anybody doing just that level course is going to get better results than almost every other healthcare practitioner out there. And there's more courses, um, but you can get amazing results for yourself, for your family, for if you're in practice or want to be in practice for clients. And the amazing thing about doing AccuNect is you literally get a healing every time you do an AccuNect healing session for somebody else. And um, it's an amazing way to nurture your own health is to is to you know be of service. And I'm going to put that in quotes because this whole idea that it's better to give than receive, like, we need to get over that. It's lovely to give. I give lovely, powerful sessions to a lot of people, and I receive energy from them. But I also heal myself every day. I do this, and so it's always giving and receiving, and that's like a key way that AccuNect works. And so that perspective change alone is phenomenally healing for when people start to study AccuNect. And yeah, I just want to. You could study it just to help others, but you should study it to help yourself by helping others, which a lot of people
Beautiful.
don't think of that way. So yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. And that's been one of the core principles, has influenced me as well. This process of healing ourselves, healing our immune system, healing who we are. We're also then nourishing our destiny.
Mm.
And that's where this all fits in, because in a way it's like, where does this fit in? This is New Earth Co-Creators, and we're working to co-create the new earth. we are nourishing our destiny by this work. So I'm sure it will resonate with all the viewers today. And thank you so much, Ka'imi. And thank you so much for everybody listening in. I do hope that you've got as much out of this podcast as I have. And do get in contact with Ka'imi for his sessions or his incredible courses. You also run one that's more like if you don't want to train in it, don't you? You run another
Yeah,
course. Do
yeah,
mention that one, because some people might want to actually just be there for the healing, not the training.
that's fine. Thank you for reminding me. I run a weekly call, which interestingly, I originally, when I launched it, I called it Nourishing Destiny, because out of an ancient textbook, it talks about the idea that, a regular physician treats actual disease, and a better physician treats imminent illness before it's actually come on, but a superior physician helps people to prolong their years without symptoms of aging and hence nourish their destiny. And it's like, well, that's the kind of physician I want to be. I don't want to stop by just fixing a problem. I want to help people nourish their destiny. Now, I now call this weekly healing webinar the AccuNect Mind Body Healing Webinar. And it's an hour. It's every week. If people can't make it live, it's recorded. And I give a short lecture on some aspect of health. Sometimes it's about dietary guidelines from a Chinese medicine perspective. Sometimes it's about managing sleep rhythms. A lot of times it is about mindset because again, psychoneuroimmunology is actually what I do, right? And then I do a healing for the group. And what's amazing is consistently, at the end of the healing, everybody's like, that was for me. I can't believe that was for anybody else. That was for me. Right. So because because we all face the same challenges. The names will change, right? So, but we're all facing the same challenges and it's immensely powerful. And I think, yeah, I've been doing this for almost 7 years now. I started right when I turned 60, and because I thought, holy, you know what? I'm officially old. I better start listening to what I tell my clients and to take care of myself. And I thought, you know what? What better way than to launch a weekly healing webinar so that I have a community that forces me to think about it, give a lecture, and then do the balancing. But I always get a powerful shift from it. And I am definitely younger and healthier than I was then. I mean, actually, I have some of my students, I'm behind on this, but some of my students are saying, Ka'imi, you need to change the picture on the website because you look so much better now than you used to, right? So, and
I mean, we
that's
could
what we
go
should be
into a
looking for.
whole other conversation. Do we age just because of what we think about of aging? That might,
Yeah.
well, maybe we'll save that one for the next one,
Okay. But yes, but that
but yeah,
idea
no,
of,
that's a great conversation actually,
yeah.
because it's
So,
it's it's true. We're programmed to believe in aging, aren't we? And
yeah, I think that's worth
we're
a whole
reversing
podcast,
that.
actually. Yeah. And so, but I used to have just on the weekly healing webinar because it's as a great resource. For a while, I ran two. One was like on the longevity, and the other was for my cancer patients on boosting the immune system. And at some point, I decided, you know what? There's so much overlap because the immune system is embedded in everything, including longevity. So I
Yes.
just merged the two. And so whether or not people are into longevity or boosting their immune system, that weekly healing webinar is gold. So
Beautiful. It
uh,
really is.
yeah,
I'm on it, and I get so much out of it. So do check that out. Check out the practitioner courses, sessions, and also do check out the Immune Power Boost on this YouTube channel, New Earth Co-Creators. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and thank you, Ka'imi.
thank you for
Lots
having me,
of
Sarah.
love.
Bless you.
Bye for now.